Welcome to CS 133, Columbia Gorge Community College, the Dalles, Oregon. This is Hughitt, instructor. We are now heading into week 7, and it will be our second PowerPoint chapter. We don't have another actual assigned PowerPoint chapter, but in week 10, you're going to have some options, so we'll talk about those, obviously, when we get to week 10. Again, it's set up basically the same way you're getting used to now. You come in with your objectives, if you're stuck and you need some help section, you've got your video that hopefully you're watching right now because this is where we're at. Some updates on Chapter 2 information, and then a downloaded PowerPoint that you need to watch about external devices. And that's going to be our topic of this week's discussion. You have your template this week because, again, it's gone just like last week. So you'll have to download the template here from Moodle to use to create your PowerPoint. And you've got your student data files from the textbook and your work to submit. You have, again, your PowerPoint learning project, and we'll look at that in the book in a second. And your version form, and again, we're not doing it for fonts or styles or colors. We're doing it for something else, so there shouldn't be many something else's, but things happen. You've got your application project we'll be looking at in a second, your 3-2-1 journal reflection, and as I reminded you last week, make sure you remember to look at what the criteria is so you don't wander off and kind of do the wrong thing and then are disappointed with what you get for a grade. Your form is going to be focused around the external devices. That's going to be our discussion this day. And then you've got your extra credit. You can do the first week's PowerPoint extra credit this week to get turned in, or you can do this week's extra credit PowerPoint and your checklist. So let's hop over and look at what we're going to be doing. We're going to do a PowerPoint. We're going to be adding more pictures, shapes, and word art this week. They come in, of course, with a really nice little intro to get you started, and this is what you're going to have when you get done. It's a very different one. It's kind of fun to do. It learns a lot of new techniques that are useful. You're going to be doing things with picture frames and picture things in it. You're going to be doing things with shapes, colors, and fonts to get this created. This is actually a picture that's been applied as a background and then watermarked, which is a cool technique and nice to know how to do. But you have to be careful you really follow the steps, because if you don't, what happens is when I click on it, the picture will slide, just like I could slide this one. This will slide, and if that slides, you've done it wrong. So there's a little check for you to do when you're kind of finishing up. If you put your mouse here and kind of pull and it slides, you didn't get through the directions correctly. You have a boo-boo. So again, it kind of brings you in here and it tells you where to choose your font, and style, and we know that's not going to work already. You've got it. So we're moving on. And this is kind of where you're going to, you can look at this one, but it's kind of telling you pick this one, and that's what you're downloading from Moodle. And there you go. You're ready to actually start going. Now, I don't know if it comes in exactly like the one did that you would have gotten if you started. I don't know if it comes in with needing to delete a slide or not. So you'll have to look and decide, do I have enough slides? Do I need to delete or not? I don't know if it comes in with the kid's picture here or not. I guess I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember. It's been up there a few terms now, and I just don't remember. And I don't think much about it, because if I get something that's off a little bit, I just automatically correct. It's a little bit harder for somebody that's not used to doing this all the time. And you're going to kind of continue on following directions. Then you're going to insert and format pictures, which is a great skill to learn. And then you're going to be using those student data files, and you're going to find the fire truck, because you're going to need the fire truck right here. So you're going to be putting that fire truck in. And then you're going to kind of continue formatting. You're going to have to make some changes. This, I believe, comes in with a white background, so you're going to have to follow the steps to get rid of that white background. Kind of continue through. You've got a first aid kit picture to get from that data file as well. You're going to make some color changes to that picture. You're going to apply a picture style. You're going to kind of continue that on through here. So right now, all of this is formatting that picture correctly. So that's going to take you a few minutes, obviously. And you still got 2 more pages getting that picture done correctly. And then you're going to start in on inserting and formatting shapes. And there are fun things you can do with shapes. So you're going to get started on that. And you're going to use the shape gallery down here. And you're going to work your way through, put the scroll in, put the plus and shapes in, start changing colors. You're going to put a font in a color and size you're not going to use. And so you're going to go through there and get that fixed until you have it in the correct font and style. Be sure you look at whether it's a serif or non-serif font. If you have trouble finding the exact one, that's always a good thing to look at because that'll at least get you in the right kind of family. Also, if you look at some of these titles, this is kind of an interesting looking font. It's a non-serif, but it's not just a plain old like Arial non-serif. So you're going to have to look a little bit to match something like that pretty close. That's going to do some copy and pasting. Kind of keep taking you through here until you finally create this in a look it's supposed to be. And this is a lot of using your eyeballs. You know, where's halfway in the paper? Well, halfway on the slide should kind of come through that plus. Where's halfway? It should kind of come through that plus. And then you have to kind of line things up. So you have to have a little bit of artist in you to look at that and figure out how to kind of get it so it's set up the correct way. Now, word art is cool, and it's a lot of fun if you don't overuse it. Once in a while, somebody gets like really crazy with it. But word art can do a lot of cool things with it. So I encourage you to kind of learn your word art because you're going to have to do that in your application project. And one caution I'll give you is there's nothing that magically tells me something's word art other than having it look like word art. And I sometimes have people do things that really, I'm not sure they're word art. And so if I can't tell they're word art, I'm going to assume they're not word art. And so please make sure you're really obvious in your word art. Word art has this kind of bubble-looking letters. They're not going to look like your standard text type stuff. They're going to look like these kind of cool bubble letters a lot of times, although there are some plainer features. So you're going to want to make sure you take care of that. You're going to just kind of continue on following all the step-by-step directions. They're going to have you do some colors and background textures and follow through here. Remember, if all else fails, there usually are options of more colors. I don't see it in this particular one because they're text fills. But you should be fine with that. You're going to find your picture again, and then you're going to format the background with transparency, which is basically your watermarking. So you're going to walk through all those steps. You're going to have a different background here. You're going to do some color things here for gradients. You're going to replace some text. This is reviewing and revising slides. And a lot of times people somehow get this far and just can't be bothered quite finishing. I don't know, or don't think anything's happening after that. I'm not quite sure. But you're going to be finding and changing some text. And on my main copy that I use when correcting, I have it like underlined and marked where you're changing text. So it makes it really easy for me to spot that. And then you're going to be adding notes at the bottom. And one question I get from students is, well, why do I do that? Well, let me open PowerPoint for a second. We'll just pop it over the top here. Well, let me just pick notice that half the ones we want aren't here. So I'm going to pick a template, pull it up, there it is. And notice I don't have any space there, but if I just shrink that a little bit, I have that add notes box down there. Now, why would you want notes? Well, sometimes you want to give information You're not really giving to the whole group, but you kind of want it like recorded in there, details, notes, reminders, those types of things. Also, especially if you're using a Mac product, this is something that Mac beats PC out on miles and miles, is Macs have a great feature for PowerPoint that when you put it up on the screen, you can see all of those notes on your screen. So what you present to the people that are watching this is not the same as you see on your screen. They see this slide, you see this, and you can look right here and see those notes. Really cool, really helpful if you're giving speeches and doing presentations and have like facts and figures or things like that you have to remember in detail. It's really nice to have. Saves you hours of sitting and memorizing a bunch of stuff. So that's a really cool feature. Windows are supposed to do it. Some people get it to work, some don't. I haven't really tried it with 2013 or 365. I have tried it with 2010, and on my machine it was not very successful. Like it didn't work. But it is a cool feature. It does let you put things there. Now, just a warning, that is not where you can put the copyright. Because when you have taken something from somebody else and you're sharing it publicly, you need to give public acknowledgement of where you got that from. And that needs to be, if it's a picture, it needs to be right on the slide, so you can like tuck it down here, small in the corner. If it's like footnoting, or if it's like MLA type stuff, then that can go back on a sources slide. But pictures need to be done on the slide that you're doing the picture on, not down here. But that's a cool feature. You're going to be doing some of that with this assignment. In the book, they're going to have you be putting notes down in the note box down here. And checking your spelling always, and then adding slide numbers, adding transitions, changing timings possibly. I'd have to look and see. Yes, it does have changing timings, so make sure you do that. It talks about how to print speaker notes. Really nice to know how to do that. That would be like notes that you would use as the speaker. And so that's really handy to have, because then you have that in a paper format. I prefer to just use a really cool machine like one of the Mac versions and have it just put it up on the screen and let me see it on the screen, and makes life really good, and I don't have to run around with a bunch of paper. Then you're going to kind of hit your chapter summary, and we're ready to move back into application projects. Of course, nothing on these first yellow pages unless you hit the in the labs and you want to do the extra credit, of course. Again, look in your student data files for the images. Hopefully they're there. Got a couple of different options. Some of these are kind of cool presentations. And this one is a bugger. This one has a lot of stuff you need. Now, this is how I have my book marked already, just to show what I have to find and what I have to make sure you grade. So when I grade, this is kind of my list. And so just to kind of recap, here's the information you'll use when you do the information. You need 4 slides that explore the subject. So you're going to have like a title slide and 4 slides. So that's now 5. If it asks for a closing slide, you'll be up to 6. I don't know, remember if it does or not. We'll have to look. So suitable theme, title, bulleted lists, shapes, word art, 4 slides that explore the subject, should contain photos and illustrations appropriately resized. There are 8 photos and illustrations on the student data files, or you can get your own if you would rather, or mix some, as long as they're appropriate for the topic. Add picture styles and effects, so you're going to have to do something with those pictures, put frames on them, put shadows on them, things like that. Add a title slide and a closing slide. So, okay, we're now up to a total of 6 slides. Title, closing, 4 topic slides. We're up to a total of 6. Format the title slide with a shape. So that means on the title slide, it has to have one of those shape things you learned to do someplace. Format the background with at least one photo, so you have to have a photo on one of them, and apply a background texture to at least one. So you're going to have a theme, 6 slides, a photo background, a texture background. Title slide must have a shape. You have to have bulleted lists. You have to have photos and resized. You have to use picture styles and effects. And then, of course, turn it into Moodle. And it does ask for a transition, so you have to make sure you put a transition on it. Lots and lots of details on that one. I would say every term I have 5 to 7 students that fail this project on the first attempt, not because they can't do a nice project, because they did very nice PowerPoints. They can't get all the details of that list. That list is a bugger. And then, of course, you come down and you do the Word document talking about your decisions, and you should have plenty of decisions to discuss. If you don't want to do that one, you can move down and teach geometry to elementary students. And geometry, for what they're talking about, is probably about a 3rd grade, maybe 4th grade level type of lesson. Wouldn't be any higher. It wouldn't be the 5th graders, and it wouldn't be maybe upper 2nd, but it wouldn't be any lower than that. This is not a kindergarten 1st grade lesson. So what would you have to have for this one? So it's going to be for young students, but we're not talking super young. You're going to do basic shapes, squares, circles, and triangles. You're going to use shapes and add photos. You're going to cover parallel lines, intersecting lines, and how intersecting lines can form angles. You're going to show them shapes such as pentagons, heptagons, and octagons. You can have an assignment where they're going to look for shapes in their own environment and draw them. You can teach them that even though a shape is turned upside down or rotated, it's still the same shape even if it looks different. And then you're going to use the concepts in this chapter, so at least 4 slides. It doesn't talk about title and ending, so it's at least 4. Now, if you feel like you need 6 slides or 8 slides, you can do that. Remember, these are kind of the minimums of what you have to have. If you go 1 extra to make it work or 2 extras to make it work, that's fine. Don't give me 30 slides, but you can go a little bit more. You have to have a suitable theme. You do have to have a title slide. And I'm on top of your 4 slides, so it's going to be a total of 5. My correction there. It's 4 topic slides and a title slide. So it's 5 slides total. And you do have to include word art. So make sure you really read through that. They both have to have word art. This one has to have a total of 6. This one has to have a total of 5 slides. Okay. So you need to make sure you read through and know those things really clearly. And then, of course, you've got the optional one over here about creating a presentation about coyotes roaming in your neighborhood, and you're the full team to do the full research. So I think that pretty much takes us through week 7, and we'll be back for week 8.